What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the lab. I'm your host, Joshua Diaz. Thank you for being with us here tonight. And we have a special guest, as always, a great friend and just one of the best guys that I know, Mr. Chris McDonough. We are waiting for Dr. Gary. However, the good doctor is possibly performing a lobotomy. Don't tell him I said that. But he'll be here shortly. And anyway, good to see you, Chris. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great, Josh. Thank you so much for the invitation tonight. It was really neat. It's great to see you, lab rats. How are you?
We were going to do this on Saturday, but it was I figured, it'd probably be better just obviously to wait until the hearing happened. And we'll get into all that. It was shocking. It was disrespectful. It was handled completely. I mean, I've never quite seen anything like that plea deal. I promise you, it was something to. It was crazy. I mean, to be honest with you, and the people that have seen it, I know that a lot of people have seen it already, but we'll get reaction from Chris and Dr. Gary when he finishes his lobotomy. Initial thoughts on a plea deal. I mean, did you see that one coming? I mean, after the Koberger thing, his whole plea deal, you're kind of like, well,
a lot of these guys, they watch each other. Maybe there was some influence there. We don't know, right?
That's kind of what I was thinking too. It's if he's, maybe it's, in their best interest, but I got to tell you that I don't think that these fellas do it out of the goodness of their heart. They're obviously doing it to save their skin so they don't have to ride lightning or, get a barbiturate that impairs them. It's not a pleasant thing to sit on death row, when you get that last meal and you're praying for a stay by the governor, like, please, it's Chris Watts. It's just all those guys all over again, and I get the plea deals, but this is the second plea deal in like two weeks that we've seen on very high profile cases. And what other reason could would they? I know that they're trying to save. And Dr. Gary, good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Oh yeah.
We're just underway, and I said that you may have been performing a lobotomy, although you're not that kind of a doctor. So I just, it is good to see you, though. How are you?
A little under the weather. I was just getting ready, and I just wasn't feeling good, so I needed a second. But,
okay. You got your sea legs under you, or?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Okay, good deal. So anyway, I don't know how much of the plea deal that you've seen from today, but I always just plea deals are are I don't know. To me, a catch-22. But did you kind of see this one coming, Dr. Gary?
I'm sorry. Are we on live yet?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, well, excuse me. I thought we were like backstage still. I didn't even see the start of the show coming.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
So, yeah, no, I thought that a plea deal was likely because, I mean, for God's sake, they had the man on videotape committing the crimes. I mean,
Yeah.
Chris, I mean, don't you think, did you have the same answer before I came on?
You know, I didn't. Yours is always much better. But you know, he took a no contest plea, right? No low contender.
I believe he pleaded guilty to the rape charges, and to the murder, I believe he pled no contest.
Okay.
And obviously, a no contest is basically, you know, they're submitting to the court, you know, that they'll get the punishment of a guilty plea, but they don't have to say guilty. I certainly, in a plea deal, do not understand that. I think that a plea deal, it should be signed, sealed, and guilty all over the place. I, I mean, what
A no contest is typically used to prevent the civil liability.
so that he wouldn't be able to do it, like he wouldn't be able to sue who? The
Right.
state?
Well, no, so that nobody can sue his estate, i.e., his family.
Ah, I see.
Okay, because it's not an admission of guilt.
Let
And
him.
so it becomes much more difficult in a civil lawsuit to prove guilt.
Mm. Well, regardless, I could care less if his parents get sued or not. I've heard their conversations on the phone. But you know, no longer is he the accused, Dr. Gary. He is admitted, and you know, kind of obviously what we knew about him. And we're gonna listen to. I mean, he gave he spoke about Maddie at the hearing today, which I'm surprised. I'm, you know, I keep saying this, and I guess I shouldn't be surprised anymore. I'm surprised that they allow this kind of stuff, you know, to happen. I have no idea why anybody would need to hear from him about her, unless it's just, you know, I'm sorry. But even then, who cares? And then you have Jen not showing up at all. Either are you surprised about that?
That I'm surprised.
Yeah. Dr. Gary, the mother, Jen, didn't show up in court today. Do you think that there could be some sort of reason for that? I mean, do you think her lawyer could have said, hey, you know?
It's impossible to say because I'm still trying to make my mind up about what exactly was the relationship going on between them. And until we have a clear idea, it's impossible to interpret her not showing up.
Yeah.
In other words, it could be interpreted from anything from having come to the hard realization of what he is, all the way up to, you know, someone saying it's a bad idea for your own, you know, future potential need to have things look a certain way, you know, to not look like you're like close with this guy or still supporting him. You see what I'm saying? We don't know what it means.
Right.
So I think we have to just sit back and wait until the story becomes clear.
Although, but I don't know that many mothers that wouldn't be clawing down the door to get in there to say something to this man for everything that he took, regardless of her liability in the future. Look, if they're going to at some point charge her with neglect or, you know, being complacent, I don't know what charge that would be. She should just.
Why would you say something when your child is dead when you didn't say anything when your child was alive?
Well, maybe that you could start at some point to do the right thing. You know, I mean, I agree with you. I understand, but it's just baffling. I don't know. I'm baffled by that. But yeah, I think that it's probably my personal guess is that she's trying to avoid some sort of liability, and it's kind of more about Jen than it is, Maddie at this point. It was nice to see Maddie's biological father in court, and he had some words that of regret with his relationship with her, and but it seemed very heartfelt, and there were people that stood up and spoke for her, but a mother not doing that is
that's pretty rough. That's pretty rough.
It's something that I have. Yeah, she didn't. There was no even written statement, like, hey, or something like, my, I loved my daughter with all my heart, and just anything, even generic, just basic. But I mean, her not being there was glaring. It was absolutely glaring. And we're gonna listen to Stearns here give it, and I know that people are going to get upset because it's just upsetting. I mean, what he says is he's just a
Just so everybody knows, for the record, I didn't see it today. I was in doing some other stuff at work, so I could not break away to get to it.
So this is going to be your first time
seeing all of this today.
All right. Let's see here. Can you hear my dog?
Is that your dog back there? Is that him?
Yeah, he's just sawing logs, dude. It's bad.
But he just left the room.
That's funny.
To go get him.
And I want to make sure that people can hear them. So
That's anything else? Thank you.
JLR was outside the courthouse, by the way.
Was he yelling?
Please,
I didn't see him yell.
Mr. Stearns.
Maybe he did. I didn't watch it all.
Under oath.
Yes, Your Honor, I would like to make a brief statement.
Okay, can everybody hear that? Yeah,
I can.
take down. You could or you couldn't.
I can. Somebody wants you to take the comments down.
Got it.
I agree that it's not fair that Madeline is not here anymore. I still have a hard time contemplating a world where she's not around, a world which feels less vibrant and less colorful than it did before. I've prayed to God countless times to trade places with her, to take me instead. But unfortunately, that's just not how he works.
I mean,
Nothing but
this guy killed her, right?
He's the guy. Doesn't sound like it, does he? Sounds like he's acting like, my father. That's like he's her father or something. Her nurturer. I mean, he was her monster. And I'm just surprised because I've dealt with impact statements. I've given them. I've listened to the accused and then then found guilty people discuss this, and there sometimes are limits on who they're allowed to address, who they're allowed to talk about, and I'm kind of baffled that this was allowed. But what do I know? I don't know anything about the state of Florida.
sorrow for her loss. And I miss her all the time. Her passing has torn me and my family apart as well. And she truly was a joy. I pray to God that she is in heaven and that he's taking good care of her. And I hope she gets to join the choir because she had a beautiful voice. I will miss her all the time. I will never not honor her memory. And I apologize for all the pain.
And there it was. I mean, a whole minute, 34 seconds of him. You know, I don't know what do you make of that, Chris? I see your wheels spinning over there.
Well, I mean, he's obviously detached. He didn't apologize for doing the act. Multiple acts, 35,000 of them. Apparently, there's a bunch of photographs on his phone and other child P. The homicide, he didn't apologize for that. He apologized for the pain. What kind of pain? To his family? To him? Where's the pain focused? It's definitely not first person. It's very disingenuous. He hopes that, you know, God would have taken him versus her. Well, he's the one that took her. God had nothing to do with it. So I think he's, you know, classic. That's why when you interview these guys, the interview that they did with him was just superb.
Yeah.
Going way back. And these are the kind of guys that, you know, when you sit across from them, you know, when you talk to them about, you know, taking children's innocence, you want to start with this idea that presents itself that they tempted him. And, you know, had she not worn that red bathing suit, I bet you probably wouldn't have touched her, huh? Yeah, you know, if she didn't have that red bathing suit on, I probably wouldn't have done that. And so this is classic, because what he's doing is reflecting off without any shame, guilt, or conscience. And I'll let Dr. Brucato talk about the psychological aspect of all of this. I'm just talking from, you know, in my investigative experience, where the very last statement, and by the way, he got the last word too, just the way he wanted it. He's the one that shut the court down at the very end with, "I'm sorry for all the pain." What, the pain that you got caught? What pain are you sorry for? He didn't say, "I'm sorry for killing Maddie. I'm sorry for having all of these problems that I wish I didn't have." And the list can go on and on and on, but he's past feeling. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. So, Dr. Gary, you know, you and I have talked about this extensively before, about how people find God in prison when they're, you know, staring down the, you know, he brings in, I pray that I could, you know, take her place, but God doesn't work that way. I hope that she's in heaven and she joins the choir because she has a beautiful voice. I mean, is this the prototypical abuser statement? You know, he alludes to a wonderful relationship with her. But what, I mean, which is obviously not true. Like, he was an actual monster tormenting her for the short life that she had, for, you know, the better part of her early memories, you know. Why the God?
Well, first of all, as I'm listening to him, he seems to be expressing remorse the same way that a parrot supposedly speaks. It's just sort of doing a kind of mimic job. It doesn't really seem to be coming from the heart. Now, maybe that's just my impression, but I feel like Chris did, a kind of detachment from the affect that a person would be experiencing, who's really having heartfelt, you know, standing at the foot of the cross, you know, having one of those moments, you know, come to Jesus moments. It doesn't feel that way because it doesn't pull at the heartstrings in any realistic way. It feels kind of parody. And the reason I think that's important, if you are also having that reaction listening to him, is that in watching somebody go through the motions of imitating having compassion, but not actually having any, you start to understand the mind of a groomer. That's what groomers do. They pick up your feelings, they pretend that they care very deeply about them, and use them in a non-compassionate way to abuse you, as opposed to a person who doesn't even have the ability to pretend that they care about you. So what's so creepy about this is you have to picture somebody who would have known how to win the confidence of a child and how to express care. Like, I'm doing this because I really care about you, sweetie, that kind of thing. And, we have a secret, sweetie, like, and I love you. And, and I also think that there's something about this idea of, like, she didn't go into the darkness or have her life taken away from her. I gave her the entryway into, joining the choir invisible and being happy. There's this kind of idea of him arbitrating, like he was God.
Like he was the savior, right?
Like
Right.
he's the one who kind of gave her that, oh, if I could, but God doesn't work that way. Like, he might as well be saying, but I don't work that way. She's
So
mine. See? And I think if you once you kind of understand that, that this is faked, at least I think it is. I mean, I'd love to see somebody who's an expert at statement analysis, things like that, just listening to this and picking apart the language, but I just don't feel it. Now, what makes him different than like a Kohlberger is at least he has the phony, how do I say this? He even takes the time to pretend he feels something,
yeah.
as opposed to just sitting there like a robot. But that's the groomer part. That's the difference between, a groomer and a person who just takes the middle of the night when nobody's looking because they have no social skills. This guy, as weird as he is, the funny thing is, in doing that, this guy is more like Ted Bundy than Kohlberger. Because he can play with your heartstrings, make you feel something, and pretend he cares about you.
Yeah, and especially before knowing who he is, before his mask is completely off. I mean, we're sitting here looking at him, stripped down. But if you were to just meet the guy on the street and he's this soft-spoken kind of, I'm going to pick up some magic cards at you remember that I cut my hand on the, he kind of tried it. Well, he didn't he tried it on the police as well, and that didn't go well.
Well, exactly. I mean, and to me, listen, I've dealt with so many offenders that to me, he feels like somebody that, like, if I were talking to him, he would get under my skin because he'd be somebody that thought I was stupid, that thought I was stupid enough to believe his snow job. So what I would do in response to that, I would pretend I did believe it, and I would just play right along and secretly be thinking, eye roll, I can't believe this guy lacks empathy to the point that he can't feel that I could tell he's full of crap. Chris, you know that kind of guy, right? That he thinks that he's pulling your leg,
Yeah.
and you just play right along with it. That's what I would do, and I would just let him yap away. And the other thing is, it's very interesting. Excuse me.
No problem.
Reminds me of a moment when I was right in the middle of a class learning psychoanalysis, and my phone went off, and it was the ringtone was the theme song to the Twilight Zone. And the Freudian professor leaned in and said, "And who is associated with that ringtone?" And I looked down very gently and I said, "My mother." Well, anyway, thereby proving everything Freud ever said, But anyway, I just that it's a true story. I have to tell you, it's just that,
Yeah.
Anyway, so but I think that I love my mother. I'm just teasing, but I think that with Stearns, thing you want to bear in mind is that everything he does is for effect. He has that. If he's a psychopath, and I can't, I'm not diagnosing him, right, but if he is, he has that quality that some psychopaths have, where first of all, everything is externalized, everything is the fault of everybody else. Chris was picking up on that. So like, for example, when the psychopath Tommy Lynn sells was asked why he killed a 13-year-old girl behind some shrubs in the park, he said it was the city's fault for not trimming the hedges because they made a place where a person would be tempted to kill someone.
What a wild thing to say.
He said with a perfectly straight face, it was the city's fault. And then proceeded to go on a tirade about how the people in charge didn't do what they were supposed to do and take care of the hedges. So that there's that quality, that sort of narcissistic core that all these types of people have. And then on top of it, there's that cruelty of giving that pseudo sorry speech, like as if he could give a flying leap. I mean, look, my guess is that if there were like, some kind of truth serum in this guy or something, he'd probably say something like, look, I killed her and I probably would again. She sort of aged out of the group that I was interested in, or something happened and I just sort of, eliminated her. And the truth is, if I were given an opportunity, I would groom another mother and child, because I think he groomed everybody. And I'd do this again, because this type of person doesn't change. He's a predator. It's just the way it is. I believe this guy was interested in children like that for many, many years, probably why he even worked at Disney World. I think this guy took a job so that kids would touch him. I think it was always that way. There are a lot of offenders who take jobs so that they can have contact with children. John Wayne Gacy dressed up as a clown and had kids crawling all over him. You think that was a coincidence?
No.
I mean, Edward Paisnell, Beast of Jersey, he used to dress up as Santa Claus so the kids would sit on his lap and everything. It's a perversion, that, and I think we have to be honest about that at the end of the day, this is a person with a paraphilic attraction, and somebody turning 13 years old would be beyond the scope of what he was interested in and would then become boring to him. I hate to say it, but if I had to guess of the motive of what her crime was in his mind, it was that she got too old.
Yeah, she's aging out.
She aged out. And that's an unfortunate reality for that kind of offender, that they will take advantage of. Typically, they will be drawn to a woman who has a child and pretend that they're in love with that person. And they will even have relations with the child's mother so that they could be with the child. That happens in the book Lolita, for example. And then what happens is, once they have gotten in there, they develop this kind of, I'm going to be a really good dad to you, and show you love and kindness, and we'll have secrets mom doesn't know about, kind of thing. Then they take advantage, and then when they're bored of you, they're bored of you. And which tells you that he's not sitting around thinking, I want her to join the choir of angels. He's sitting around thinking, she got dull. She got uninteresting to me, and I would have taken another victim if I could. And believe me, he would have. I mean, Chris knows. I mean, you think this guy would have stopped?
No way. And what's interesting, to dovetail on what you're saying, for the audience, to help them, for some obviously watching, there are probably many victims watching this particular program.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely.
But one of the things, Josh, that you'll notice in that statement in of itself, and to kind of dovetail on what Dr. Brucato was saying, is he talks about releasing her into the hands of God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So the opposite of that is, obviously, she was under the control of the devil.
Right.
Right. And so we have to always remember that these individuals, during their grooming process, the very first thing that they do is they target their victimology.
Right.
And that's important to understand here, because he had a particular type, and he had all of these visions of, once he had her, to the various phases of the grooming process as a whole, she got to a place where it was so done in his mind that he releases her.
Or
And
she was gonna tell.
or
That,
go ahead.
that's what I was thinking as well. Like, I think that maybe she was getting to the age where she was going, well, you know what? This is not normal. This is not appropriate. And I'm interested in boys my age. And she could very well have been threatened him saying, I'm going to tell, which is basically the same thing as aging out. I mean, I would think, I mean, you know,
Different sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah.
Her age was a problem. Her birthday came, and then that was it.
and I'm telling you, I remember seeing, you know, a photo of her when she, you know, was younger and while she was still being abused, you know, in that time frame. And then the very last photo of her, she looks like two completely different people. Like she just like Maddie looked almost adult, you know, in some sense, the way that, you know,
And that occurs during the isolation phase,
yes.
because they isolate her. An RSO or an offender, they work very hard after they start establishing connection and trust and building all of that. The next process is isolation. And so what they do is they start to transfer move the victim into their fantasy. That could mean, hey, you know, you'd look great with lipstick on, or you'd look wonderful in that dress. Oh my gosh, let's go buy that dress, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. And fantasy was huge for this guy.
Yep. And so his whole process is evolving here. But once he had her and he had desensitized her, right, which is another phase of all of this, once he's got her into that abusive trust and has, you know, threatened her, a variety of other things, a lot of things that go on. Okay, I'm going to kill your mom. I'm going to kill your cat, your dog, your grandparents, your parents, or whatever. There's a lot of things that they do. And once the victim feels like they're trapped, and for him, he had all the photographs.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do with that if you're 13 years old and your whole world is your peer group?
Right.
And one, you know, evil person like this leans over and, you know, says, well, if you say anything, I'm going to share this on Instagram.
Well,
and she doesn't know. Go ahead, Gary.
Well, she was also hitting an age when she was likely beginning puberty, possibly beginning to menstruate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Might see a gynecologist, etc. And the thing is, and it's a very, very uncomfortable thing to talk about. So we have to talk about these things very gently.
Sure.
But the fact of the matter is that I would be willing to bet that if a physician took a look at this child, they would be able to tell that something had been happening to her for a long time. Do you understand what I'm getting at there? Okay. And I think the point is, for a long time, you know, this guy had a secret with this child. I did not believe the things that he was making her do. How do we say this? I think there were many, many, many unnatural things that were going on that are probably recorded. Let's just say there are many things in this world I would rather do than be the poor person who has to go through that for evidence reasons and look at that material.
Well, that's a great point, because I was thinking just the other day, I was tweeting about it, because, you know, he was supposed to have two separate trials, one in September and then one starting next week, I think, something like that. But the people that were going to be on the jury would have to see all that evidence. And I can assure you that it would be so disturbing.
Yes.
It would affect those people for the rest of their lives. Stearns would have even more victims that he put through the system, and those jurors would have been, even though that's their quote unquote civil duty. It's so unnatural to have to deal with those kinds of things for just it's hard for people that do it professionally. Chris, you did what exactly were you trained in again?
Well, we don't get, Dr. Gary and I don't get invited to a lot of dinner parties. My expertise is criminal behavior analysis in relationship to pedophilia during the course of homicide. So basically, as people are murdering children, like Stefan Stearns, the sexual gratification side of it. And I was trained in 1990. They used to send you to Quantico, but I had the short course. It was a 3-month course with the behavior science unit. Kevin Brown was the agent that talked to me, and then I had some tutelage with Mary Ellen O'Toole back in the day, and that was because we had many kids in San Diego, late 80s, early 90s. We had Laura Royal, Leticia Hernandez. There's the Sellers boys were murdered in San Diego County at the time, and there was also coming off of the capture of what's his name, Porter, where he had 43 prostitutes that he dumped off of Interstate 8 in Buckman Springs, and that was part of the area where Leticia Hernandez had been spotted at a rest stop in Buckman Springs off of the Interstate 8. So the question was, we want to send somebody to see if there was any possible way that the suspect had shifted. And because they didn't know at the time if there were one or two multiple suspects. And so myself and a couple other folks got selected, and we were sent and trained. And it was kind of a natural fit for me because of my son, my oldest son, Ian. That's how I got into law enforcement. That was the motivation. When the car incident, which I've shared many times on, I've kind of opened my soul a little bit to the world. Once that incident happened and I wasn't able to get to the plate of the car, I made a vow with God. I made a deal. I said, if you help me, I want to hunt these people down for the rest of my life. And I've been doing it ever since. It's been 42 years now, almost 43 years. I've been studying these people. It's interesting because I was in the jail today talking to a guy. He's 74 years old. And we got him on DNA. And he just opened up. And he starts talking about just some crazy stuff. Gary, you would love this guy. I can't go too deep because he's in custody right now. But the long story short, he's classic. 74 years old. He's probably, victimized hundreds and hundreds of children in his time. But with the advent of DNA, he'd never been arrested. So he was never in CODIS. And they end up catching him with the kid. And it's a double down now. Have a good day. So, yeah, that's why Gary and I don't get invited to a lot of dinner parties, because he'll start talking about, the new evil and all the crazy stuff that floats up there. And I'll start talking about all the crazy stuff that floats around. And it's like, thank you.
But by doing what we do for a living, we make it possible for other people to enjoy the party. That's the idea, right? So they have a party and they have no idea, what's. I always tell the story that you got to keep me, like, you don't want to go with me to a department store because I can point to any object in the department store and tell you about a murder that happened with that object. It just happened tonight. I was in, I won't say which store it was, but I was in a store that sells a lot of plants. And, you know, I was buying a plant as always. And somebody stopped me and said, "Look at how beautiful this one is, sir. You know, you seem to know what you're doing. Do you think I should buy this one?" Whatever. And I said, "That plant is a poison. That plant, you know, is a toxin if it were ingested, and it's very dangerous to human beings and animals. I would encourage you not to purchase it." And I thought to myself, my God, how sad is it that I know that? But it is. It's a highly deadly poison. And the store didn't realize it when I was selling that plant. So, you know, that's the curse of doing this kind of work, is you lose your innocence. And that is the theme. That's a motif that floats throughout the story of Stefan Stearns, is the idea of the tainting of innocence. Whenever I think of Stefan Stearns, or, you know, it brings me right back to this point Chris is making about our work. It's that thing of having eaten of the tree of knowledge. You know too much, and it causes your downfall. See, so there's something about innocence. You know, what's the line from The Importance of Being Earnest? Try to remember it. It's something like, innocence is like a delicate fruit. Touch it, and the bloom falls out of it. Well, it's like that. There's something about innocence and leaving it be, and this time of childhood that this poor kid got robbed of, and then this guy's unmitigated gall to paint this ridiculous picture that she's going to some place that's Sugar Candy Mountain, where, you know, she's going to get to sing in the choir and whatever. Now look, that is not to, of course, I'm religious, to knock the notion of heaven. I don't mean that.
Yeah,
I mean the gall to paint it like he dispatched her off to the, you know, on the happy school bus off to La La Land, you know, when really what it is he strangled her to death. Now, I study strangulation with Dr. Burgess at Boston College, and Victor Petreka. You know, it's not something that takes 2 seconds to do. I mean, you got to picture this guy staring right into this child's face with her eyes wide, and she's terrified, and he's choking her. Chris, you know how long it takes to crush a person's larynx?
It's like 3 or 4 minutes at least, right?
He's just sitting there, you know, and probably feeling quite like God. He's not dispatching her to heaven to sing in the choir. He was breaking her voice box. Not sending her off with her sweet voice to God. Took her voice away.
Yeah, he's strangling her.
Strangled her to death. So, you know, that's what, you know, and the book I would recommend, if people really can tolerate it, the person who I think has written the most eloquently about these issues is a member of our foundation, Dr. Salter, Anna Salter. And she wrote a wonderful book, a very disturbing book, but a wonderful book called Predators. And she has a new one that just came out recently, which I thought was terrific. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what it was called, but I read it, sent me a copy, and I read, I think, an advanced copy of it. It was a marvelous book. But the thing that characterizes her writing is this complete loss of any romantic ideas about these people. You know, these ideas that they all secretly want to be loved and feel real sorry and whatever. She has seen so much of this stuff. She had one guy she spoke to who had 1,250 child victims. I mean, give me a break. She did a calculation that you could put all the people together that have been affected by a small number of offenders. She looked at it would have been enough to fill multiple football stadia. I mean, give me a break. I mean, you know, so she has this way of looking at these offenders and just going like, let's just call this what it is. Like, these people are not going to stop. Like, this is just sheer unmitigated, hideous reality. And that's what I want people to understand about Stearns. I mean, you know, that there's something so diabolical about somebody that could speak.
Well, and I think I think, Gary, don't you?
It's hideous. You know, beyond.
I think our audience is mature enough, smart enough, obviously, to catch what we're talking about here, but I think there's a bigger threat on the horizon. I think that is also part of this conversation tonight with Stearns. And we're gonna be diplomatic.
You can mean a few things.
Yeah,
but-
community, right? Yeah, I concur. However, there is a movement taking place
Oh,
in our society, and now we have to step back for a moment, because when we started looking at this many years ago, this was before the internet. This was before anything. This is when they used to trade Polaroid photographs and that kind of stuff. This is when the guy would sit in the deep end of the pool and he would, wave at the parents with his feet dangling in the pool, and the little kids would come by holding the edge of the pool, and he'd reach down and molest them and then hand them over to the opposite side and then wave back at the parents like, I got him, he's okay, don't worry about it, or she's fine. Okay. But there's a big threat coming in our society, in my opinion. And we talk about this with law enforcement, so this is the first time you're going to hear it here on the lab, actually on YouTube probably. Some folks may be aware of it, others may not. I'm going to send you a private chat, Josh, and if you look this up, okay. So when you get that, pull it up, because it's a general concept. That's a concept. And what the concept is for our audience, remember, everything is, staged here for these personality types. They go through this idea of, elements of staging, meaning not staging bodies or anything like that, but they go through this process of targeting, and then they build from there. Okay, well, part of one of the biggest things that they depend on, and Stearns depend on this, and you're seeing it play out with the parents. Okay, is this they're desensitized to the fact that their child could do this, i.e. Stefan, and they're in this denial mode. Okay. Well, he has played his parents as well as society and all the other victims in the victimologies who he has chose. Well, there's a huge movement going on. Here's a book about it. And it's been only happening the last couple of years. And it's called MAPS, Minor Attracted Person, People. This is a movement to legalize pedophilia. And there are books about it. Here's one right in front of you. And this is the next phase. And I've been in this game, like I said, 42 years. This is the next threat to your children. And you need to call your legislators. You need to call everybody and their mother and say, this will not happen in our society. And it could come under the cloak of umbrellas in terms of religious traditions. it could come under the cloak of umbrellas of we all are the same, therefore we should love one another. And I just happen to love children. Okay. There is a movement taking place where our society just went through a transition in the last 3 years, where some of the things that were taking place at libraries around the country, okay, this is all this is the undercurrent. Now, I did the predictive analysis of the white collar predator in 1993. I'm going to do the predictive analysis live tonight in 2025. This is your threat as parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles. And NAMBLA was 1972 is when that organization started. It chartered in 1977. It became active in 1979 and in the early 80s. And when I was a vice detective in 1984, I was working undercover, arresting NAMBLA members. This is the next phase, one of them. This is real stuff. And the problem is it's permeated a desensitized phase, because there are people that are going to feel that it's normal. And
Yeah, you're right. And that they would have like some sort of sympathy for somebody that has that quote unquote, disorder or attraction or whatever. I mean, to be honest with you, we kind of saw a little bit of this today, with Stefan getting to talk about Maddie the way that he did. And it wasn't, personally, I found it barbaric that he was even allowed to say, I'm going to miss her. I really enjoyed her. I mean, this, he's the kind of guy that would, fight for something like that,
yeah, and if you look at just even this statement here, attraction versus disorder. While a MAP experiences attraction to minors, not all MAPs will meet the criteria for clinical diagnosis. Okay. Well, that's just wordsmithing written by a MAP. Now think about that. Stefan Stearns worked in an environment where he was surrounded by children. We have movements in this country right now where people are dressing up as princesses and greeting children at Disney World, and nobody's saying, why is this dude dressed like a princess around tens of thousands of little girls whose dreams, fantasies, their fantasies is to come in and be a princess? Well, okay. Has anybody asked the question of why does an individual who's in her 20s or 30s dress like a princess and want to be around little children? Does he have fantasies? I would submit to you the answer is yes. We used to have our phone number on the wall in the local bathrooms. It says, for a good time, call this number. And when I worked Vice, we used to have a phone in our Vice office that would ring. And it would be people calling that number, unaware that they're calling the cops. Right now, here's the good news. On the internet, they're using I got to be careful. I don't want to give away too many secrets. They're using AI to capture these predators because they think they're talking to children and they're actually talking to a robot, a bot. And they've trained these bots to respond like children. Right?
Yeah. Kind of like what the sting operations that like Hansen would do, but it was a person talking.
Yeah, they just took down like 200 or 300 kids or 200 or 300 people recently. DOJ did. That was all AI generated.
That's impressive.
So it's basically, there are so many of them, you can't keep up with it, but the computers can. And they're creating all these chats. Okay. And so we have to think about this for a second, because before the internet, what did these guys do? Well, you know, Dr. Gary's can tell us what they used to do. And all that stuff, that fuel was behind the counter at the 7-Eleven, or it was at the X-rated bookstore. You know, they were zoned, by municipalities, all of this craziness that today you can just go to your local library and sit down and watch things. All that used to be zoned with obscenity laws by society. Those are all gone. They're all gone. Okay. And so now you have organizations like NAMBLA that have been around since the 70s. Okay. That are going to take advantage of it. And MAPS is one of those organizations, or one of those thought process. And that's a thought process, by the way. They're minor attracted persons. So that's a thought. Well, that thought is driven by fantasy. They have fantasy about children. But they're going to wordsmith it to society to say, yeah, but nothing to see here, don't look here. And if you say anything about it, you're a bigot, you're racist, you're this, you're that, or whatever the problem is. Okay? That's your problem, i.e. somebody that says, wait a minute, I used to hang out in bathrooms wearing a body wire for some of the most sexual deviant behavior you'll ever experience in the world. And are you telling me you want all of us to ignore this? No, there's something broken here. And it's not us. It's not me. I can tell you that. And so we've got to really be careful about what we accept as a society as a whole. Because what we're doing is we're creating hundreds of Stefan Sterns. That will be the result.
Well, I mean, without getting into detail, as we're sitting here, we're feeling the entire society being torn over the realities of what may or may not have happened involving very prominent people with Epstein. So the whole idea is the notion of there being behind the scenes powerful people taking advantage of children, while in public bemoaning the horrors of what is going, is a disturbing thing. That there's something happening in our culture where we sort of run out of things that shock us, and we're getting down to things now that are just so unspeakable that it's impossible to wrap your mind around it. But that is in the background. That's what we're dealing with right now, is the question of, was there a pleasure island somewhere where a rich guy brought people to take advantage of children? And just think about what you're saying when you say that. See what I'm saying? So Chris, I think your point is important, which is that there's this, it's sort of like the metaphor of the boiling frog. If you do it too quickly, the frog will leap out of the pot. But if you do it gradually, the frog will just complacently sit there until it boils to death. And I think there is a little of that going on in our culture. Yes. But Chris, it is, I'm sure it's not lost on you that, I mean, that's what half the, what the country's thinking about right now. The possibility of deep, disturbing secrets affecting children that went unreported so, also, Chris, look, as somebody with a gentle heart, which resonates a lot with my own, and I'm sure this is true also of you, Josh, there's something about these crimes against children that really get to me on a kind of spiritual, psychological level. It's very hard for me. I could put a sort of wall around anything and have a distance from it clinically, but there's just something about these offenses against these young kids like this that's just a little too much to kind of put into a compartmented place. I know a lot of people who won't do this work. They'll work with adults who are assaulted or people who assault adults, but there's just something about this population is just too much. Chris, you've had that, haven't you? Times when you're like, okay, I need a few months off.
And I came off that reflective aspect of it. This could have been my son.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
and so that was it was interesting that my life took the course that it did. Because I had no aspirations of becoming, a detective. I had a police officer. I had no aspirations of, that this was really the way I was going to go. I mean, I thought about it when I was like 15. I think that was the first time I really reflected on, maybe I should do something like that. But I really thought I was going to go in the Marine Corps and become a military officer. Probably because obviously both of my parents were Marines. And so I had that heavy influence. But it all changed. And, like I was saying, in, the early, late 79, early 80, I can't remember the exact day. My son may remember, but he was on his big wheel and he was out in front of our house. Remember the big wheel? Had to be like 80, 81, whatever it was at the time. And he's riding this thing out in front of our house, and I'm looking out the kitchen window, and I just happen to look out the window and I see the car there on the side of the curb. And the passenger's door is open, and my son is near that dang passenger door on this big wheel. I have no idea what's being said. He didn't even know at that time, obviously. And I did the math quickly. Holy crap. This guy's trying to get my kid in his car. And I took off like a bat out of heck. And I ran after the car. He saw me coming, I'm assuming in the rearview mirror, because boom, he was outie. And I thought to myself, what just happened? And it was so impactful and scary for me. As a young father, a young child, he was my first, who, by the way, for the audience, he's a professor at UNLV now. He's a professor of economics at University of North Las Vegas. He's the chair of the department up there. You can go look him up. His name is Ian McDonough. Tell him I said hi. Anyway, that whole life would have been lost. My son's whole future, all of the stuff that he's accomplished to this day was gone in a split second had God not placed me in the right position, in my opinion. And so I took a personal, selfish aspect that said, you know what? I'm going to hunt these people down. I'm going to go for it, whatever that meant. And that's how I got into law enforcement. And Gary, how did you get into what you do? I don't think anybody's ever heard that.
Well, I had started out in seminary with the idea of pursuing the priesthood. And my first interactions with offenders came from the ministry side. of things. And it was very interesting. What happened is that there was this, I want to be very careful here because the institution itself was a good place. But there was a very difficult thing that happened there, which is that one of the priests that was responsible for spiritual counseling came to light as a horrendous pederast. And this is the priest that I was receiving my spiritual counseling from. And it was very difficult because he seemed like a kind of avuncular, that is to say, uncle-like kind of person. But it turned out that he was an offender that had targeted a lot of kids. And that sort of shook a lot of my understanding because I had a kind of an innocence almost. I mean, talk about, eating of the tree. I had a little bit of an innocence that got shattered by that because I was raised in a world in which people like that were revered. I mean, that is a world that I wanted to join because I authentically wanted to help people. And so then I began to understand the other side of things, not the Christian heart toward the offender, but the understanding that sometimes we have more compassion for the mugger than the mugged. And then I started becoming interested in both sides of the story and how to prevent offenders. But I don't usually talk about that story, but the reality is I did, I knew people who were affected by it. The details of it are absolutely disturbing beyond, I won't give them. But he was defrocked and then wound up dying and in obscurity. But it happens, and I think I'm Catholic and I love my faith, the treasures of it. But I think that it is very difficult to sit with the privacy that was maintained in ecclesiastical circles surrounding abuses, and the way that sometimes religious organizations feel that they wish to deal with it privately instead of, going to law enforcement or sort of like, and they'll say things like, we sentenced him to a life of penance, that kind of thing. I mean, that's a really difficult and important thing to talk about. I'm yet to see a really good book on the subject of it. It's just a topic we don't want to talk about. The abuses that go on in religious organizations and people that pose as godlike helper figures. And many of the people that were in seminary, not many, some of them, were people who I think, this wasn't true for me. I really wanted to live a life of service. That's why I was interested in it. And I still do try to do that. But there were people there who I think were running from their own sexuality or their own sexual impulses, and places like that can become havens of people who are trying to battle demons and then give in to them. The power that they get takes over. I remember once reading a report, I won't say which diocese it came from, although it was public, where they were cataloging all of the abuses by religious of children in that diocese alone. And just to give you one example that I could barely describe without being too much, there was a case there of a boy who was photographed in his underwear tied to a crucifix. And the photographs were sold to other perverts by the priests in the parish. Just to give you one example. There is some evil that has penetrated into the religious spheres, and I basically took that, and walked away from it, left. I didn't want anything to do with that darkness. And now I try to dedicate my life to helping people and to battling people like that. But I saw up close and personal that darkness and how it affected some people that I knew firsthand. And I was astounded because this is somebody that I had opened up to and shared with. And I liked the guy too. The
That's
master.
really fascinating.
Yeah.
From getting to, because I've known you for quite some time, and
Yeah.
it's really interesting, Josh. I mean, you're hearing us kind of, this is how we became what we do and why we are. And
Yeah.
and I saw that comment, by the way. It was great response.
Thank you.
Because one of the things I think it was really important to, and this is vitally important to understand the progression of how these individuals get to the place where they're turning into Stearns or other individuals that select and choose children. Okay. They just don't wake up one day and say, you know what, today's the day I think I'm going to, hurt Maddie. Okay. There is a whole progression of their behavior to get them to that place.
Yeah.
And you heard it in his inability to say it in this court hearing today. And when he says, I'm sorry for the pain, he didn't qualify that. What does that mean? Is it your mom and dad's pain? Is it your pain? And I'm not going to kick a dead horse on that. However, society has to step back and say, stop for a second. Were there red flags that took place here? I saw a comment earlier about somebody when they were younger about the flasher. And the remember that guy, the flasher?
Yeah.
With the trench coat.
The trench coat guy, right. Society's past that guy. Because where is that guy? We're not talking about the flasher. We're talking about Epstein Island. Okay. So we've gone from this guy to a whole island with abuse and society going, ooh, okay, what's that? Who's involved in that? Okay. So
let's just say something happened there.
Let's just
pretty.
Yeah.
It wasn't pretty. You know what I'm saying? The victims are numerous.
Well,
I love Cake Boo's statement. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, Chris, go ahead, please.
We're evolving to a new evil. That's a great
That's what I was going to say. This goes back. This goes back to
what I write about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. This goes back to exactly what Dr. Gary wrote an entire book about, is the erosion of, I mean, it gets worse and worse and worse. It's like every day, and maybe it has something to do with the way that information is distributed now, or the access to people that are vulnerable, the elderly getting scammed by phone calls saying, we're not going to let your grandson out of jail unless you send us, $3,000, or targeting children because it's more accessible because of online. And I mean, that has a lot to do with what we're talking about. And it just seems as though technology has furthered predators, or has made it easier for predators to prey. And that's sort of what we're dealing with now.
And it adds a new layer of anonymity, the ability to fool people, and it is really disturbing. I do want to clarify something, because of something I saw in the chat. Anybody who knows me knows there are very few things in this world I dislike more than having words put in my mouth or being misread, as if, because I try so hard to traipse through minefields gently, with my words, and still there's always someone who twists what you say the wrong way. So let me be clear that I am not suggesting that there is a relationship between people who identify as homosexual, gay, bi, so forth, and committing crimes against children. What I was saying was that some people who are religious, who are coming to identify as gay or bi and have guilt surrounding that, sometimes enter religious situations for that reason. And then there are some people that are battling paraphilic disorders that go into it for that. It's all different things that people are kind of battling. But let me be crystal clear, because that is a misnomer in the general population, that there's some, as a matter of fact, pedophiles tend to be attracted to opposite sex victims. It's hebephiles, that is to say, people who are attracted to teenagers who are under the appropriate age, that tend to be attracted to same-sex victims. But it is important, because somebody was sort of bristling at thinking that's what I was saying, and I want to be very clear about that, because I am, I look, I have spent a lot of time in this world working with people, and I really think people don't choose that, and I don't think, I'm not here to ever cast any kind of negative light on anyone of that because of their sexuality, but I think that a person who targets children, that's a moral choice. I think that precisely what Chris is talking about is we have to be careful not to come up with a biological explanation of being attracted to children that normalizes it.
Correct. And
I think it's exactly what he's saying, because that's what we do in our culture. Everything is, wrapped up in a label, and it makes it fine, and that will never be okay.
And there was somebody, a couple of people in the chat that said, this is homophobic or whatever it is. This has nothing to do with homophobia. This has nothing to do with any of that. We're talking about predators.
I would never say anything against.
Absolutely not. This is about predators preying on children, and predators come from.
That I'll say something against.
What's that?
That I'll say something again.
Yeah, predators come from all walks of life, and so, like I said, so to just deduce it to something like that, completely, to me, misses the conversation that we're having. And by the way, the conversation is not an easy conversation to have. It's the whole thing is touchy. People view it differently. We're giving you our feeling, each one of us individually. And so
we're trying to identify part of how far will society go? What's society's feelings?
Yeah, how long we make excuse? Like I saw today, I'm telling you, like today, I watched a man who admitted to abusing and killing a child that was in his custody, that was not his blood relation at all, had no business sleeping in bed with her. Talk about how much he's going to miss her, how great she was, how lovely, how bright the whole world. I watched that today. I never thought I would see something quite like that. I saw it today. It shouldn't have been allowed. Judges control that courtroom. What in the hell was that? It was crazy.
Well, it was 35,000 photographs later. What he's bummed about is he can't get to his photos anymore or create them. That's his disappointment. That's the pain that he's caused.
Yeah, I don't care. And I don't care about his rights. I don't care about his right to speak. I don't care about his right to have an opinion. I think that they should have duct taped his mouth shut the whole time and just sit there and listen. I remember when Nicholas Cruz, they played back the shooting for Nicholas Cruz in the courtroom, and they played some of the video and audio, and he plugged his ears and he put his head down. And I'm sitting there watching it going, why is he allowed to, they're getting ready to sentence this guy, right? He's on video, he's all this stuff. And he plugs his ears and puts his head down. Somebody should have went over and made him put his head up, take his fingers out of his ears and say, listen to what you did. Listen. I just,
well,
I didn't see anything quite like that today. I've never seen anything
I want to be careful that we don't go down a rabbit hole of philosophy and so forth, but you know that anyone who listened to an episode of the Witness Box knows that we can do that pretty well. But I will say this: I think part of the problem is, and Michael Stone and I used to have long chats about this. Is that at some point in our culture, the notion of sin, of moral degradation, was tossed out the window. Everything is reduced to a biological or psychological urge. And so what happens is that you wind up viewing people who commit these atrocities as sick, instead of understanding that many of these things happen because people have vile personality structures and make choices that happen to be selfish. And that is a problem. That's the whole issue in a nutshell, is where do you draw the line? So like, for example, you can wind up looking at a person who's committed horrendous attacks against children and say, but he's ill. He's ill. Okay. Except that he knew what he was doing, right? I mean, he knew the difference between right and wrong, correct? So what is the sickness? An excuse? So that's the whole problem, is that, and one of the points I make at the end of the New Evil is I say that this tendency to attribute everything to external forces can also be viewed as the essence of narcissism. Not my fault. I'm sick. It's that thing's fault, right? So that, and I think that's the whole trouble. So that somewhere along the way, we started viewing, for example, incarceration as like a place where you were helping somebody. That it was like a hospital. Not a hospital. It's a place where you're punishing someone.
Yeah.
So now it's like, his cell is too cold. That's cruel. That kind of thing. Now, look, I'm all for being humane, but the point I'm trying to make is we have a tendency to forget that we're talking about people who have made moral choices. A very small fragment of people who commit violent acts are doing so because they're sick. Among serial killers, only 0.06, that's less than 1% of serial killers have serious mental illness that makes them unaware of what they're doing. Among mass murderers, it's about less than 8, it's about 8% of them. I mean,
And to dovetail into what
but Chris, you get what I'm trying to say, right? That it's
I get it,
a
100%.
moral issue, and we've forgotten it.
Josh, pull up the link I just sent you, and we're going to make Dr. Brucato's point here in 30 seconds. It's in the private chat.
Yeah, I got it.
And we also live in a kind of Mr. Rogers world where nobody's allowed to be wrong.
This is how much. This is a society shift. Okay, this is the point we're trying to make for everybody, and unfortunately, you have to embrace it because it's reality. Okay, that's the unfortunate problem here.
All right.
This is the prison that Brian Koberger is going to. Okay, look at go to the paragraph, Idaho Maximum Security Institute. Look how they identify their prisoners. Residents.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
How many
Does it have flowers painted on the wall in his cell?
Well, why don't we just call it the Residence Inn?
Right.
But
Exactly.
it says IMS opened in November 1989 to confine Idaho's most disruptive male residents.
Disruptive.
They can't even use the word inmates.
Prisoner. Murderers.
You can't make this up. You cannot make this up.
Residents.
Okay? This is the point we're trying to make about this other stuff that we're talking about. We have got to a place, okay, where the victim, Maddie, doesn't count. We've gotten to a place where the Idaho 4 don't count.
Correct.
The residents count. Now, this is whoever wordsmith this problem here, okay? is when you go to an incarcerated Department of Correction, okay, you're going with inmates. You're not going to say, hey, who's in room 304? Oh, that's resident Bob. Okay.
I can't stand it. We got to stop saying resident, Chris. It's too annoying.
I know, but it's here.
Point.
I
You
know.
can't make this up.
We've got
It
to
has a
translate this.
capacity. Look at it. It says a capacity of 549 residents.
And residents who are Idaho Security Medical Program. So they're talking about they it's like
A resident who's under the sentence of death.
it's
He's
like
a resident.
yeah.
Look at it. It says right there. A resident under the sentence of death.
And residents who are Idaho Security Medical Program.
Who signs up for prison? Because a resident makes it sound like, hey, where are you going, Bob, for the weekend? I'm going to IMSI.
Here's your fruit basket.
Yeah.
You're our guest. Be our
Yeah.
guest. Be our guest.
Here's your
Our
free
service.
water, platinum member. You've been in the system for 30 years.
It's so
Here
silly.
you go. Here's your sign.
Right, fill out your meal card. You want your vegan meals. You want your,
And just so everybody can see it, Josh, make sure you scroll down and show that this is the Department of Corrections. And I actually scroll up. I'm sorry. Department of Corrections, Idaho. This is the maximum security prison where
That looks like the school I went to in 7th grade.
this is where Koberger is going. And if anybody wants a really good time, go up and look at, management services and go through all of the programs that their residents get.
That looks like the junior high.
You know what? It is what it is. Okay. And this is why when we ignore, I have a philosophy, and it's real simple. Is it better to be loved by God or to be trusted by him? In my opinion, it's trust. Because he loves everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, what your orientation is. Who cares? God doesn't care. But does he trust you? That's the question. And if the answer is no, then we need to do some self-reflecting. Does he trust our society right now with children is the question for me. That question changed when I sat across from Wesley Allen Dodd. Gary's written about this guy extensively. He's probably one of the most evil, worst child murderers on the earth. Thank goodness he was executed.
Chris, Wesley Allen Dodd hanged a child in a closet, left him dead, went out, and came back later to abuse the dead boy, who was hanging like a robe in the closet. And when asked, said, if given the opportunity, he would gladly do it again. He was writing a book in which he expressed a fantasy to pick up two brothers at the same time and make one watch the other one be castrated. He was the worst and had absolutely no sympathy whatsoever for anybody. You, Chris, did he ever express to you any regret?
No. I asked him, what would happen if they let you out? And he said, I'd kill another child. He didn't even breathe. It just happened. But one of the things that we have to understand as a society, okay, and this guy was one of the worst of the worst.
The worst.
And I spent
22 plus.
He's a 22 plus. I spent almost 7.5 hours with this guy, just me and him. It was just he and I took him all the way back to when he was a child and walked him all the way through all of the situations that Dr. Brucato just talked about.
Yeah.
If you want to see some of that, it's on my page. I got clips of when we were communicating. But here's one of the most evil things that he said. When he was a youngster, he would stand in his upstairs window when all the kids were going to school, and he would expose himself to all of the children.
Mhm.
And as kids do, they laugh, they point, ha ha. Okay. Well, the cops got involved multiple times and told the parents, look, your son's hanging out in the window. You need to get this under control. Okay. Well, from there, he escalated into riding his bicycle around town, and he would dress a certain way so that his privates would, be exposed, and all the other kids would then see it that way. Okay. Well, here's where I'm going. He told me he would, when he went in for counseling, because the system got involved, that he learned how to manipulate the system based upon the answers that he would give to the counselors. Okay.
That's the kind of reality Anna Salter would give you.
Yes.
You read her, right?
Yes. And so now we take that back and we say to ourselves, okay, how does this apply to society? What do we do to protect our children, to protect our systems? Okay. And protect our culture. How do we do this against a tidal wave of culture saying, yeah, but you know what? You guys are wrong over here. You're wrong. Okay. Because, you're trying to identify, you're trying to, say this or that, whatever. And so what society's doing is we are creating, as these cubicles of behavior, and keep me on a straight track, Gary, okay, that we're teaching these individuals through our social interactions of support how to contain, how to deceive, and how to manipulate their victimology even further.
Well, I mean, it depends if the person committing the offenses is a psychopath. I mean, if you're psychopathic, yeah, absolutely. There are some people who commit these offenses because they're more bizarre or kind of severely disturbed. But as I keep emphasizing, that's the minority. Most of these
Agreed.
people have paraphilic disorders in addition to personality problems. And, and some of them were also abused themselves, but that doesn't make it okay. There was a normalization of some of this stuff for them that doesn't make it okay. And, but what I've been heartened by in the outcry in the public about the Epstein thing is that what it teaches me, as somebody interested in this notion of the boiling frog, is that it seems that with all the things that our culture is willing to turn a blind eye to, it still will not accept the notion of the harm of children. That seems to be the one thing that's got people going, wait. And it's from both sides of the aisle. It's not a political issue. What it looks like is the polls have been heartening to me, because they're telling me that the whole country's in an uproar about it. And that's good, because if that wasn't sickening us, there's something wrong with us. If that became a political issue, there's something wrong with us. And I'm happy that seems, for some reason, the buck seems to stop there. Thank God. Thank God. And, and the one thing I'm happy about is that our culture still seems to believe that there is an age before which a person should not be exposed to sexual things, and after which it's okay for them to be. Good. That is one thing I hope never gets deteriorated. It's funny, in our culture, we take for granted the construct of childhood. But actually, prior to the Industrial Revolution, there was no concept of childhood. The whole idea, for example, of a child having toys and things like that, that's a post-Industrial Revolution idea. Before the Industrial Revolution, kids as young as 4, 5, 6 years old were working on farms. The idea was that, we're going to have a bunch of kids, a few of them are going to pass away, and some will make it to adulthood, and we need the help. This idea of a time set aside for innocence is very important developmentally. And I think it probably did a lot of damage to kids over the millennia that there was no time set aside to just be innocent. And I'm glad that we understand that. Chris, what we're touching on in this conversation is that Stefan Stearns, when you talk about him, it's like putting your finger to the pulse of what's going wrong in the culture, and he is like an avatar of it. And I'm sure that what he was doing was fueled by dark web porn that he was probably looking at. I am deeply disturbed by things like the advent of the metaverse, and different technologies that will make it more and more possible for somebody to have an outlet for dark fantasy. I told you guys on a previous episode that I had heard about some people who were studying the question of whether AI can be used to reduce urges in people who are MAPS, because they can play it out on an AI humanoid kind of figure. I don't think so. I think it'll break down resistances and normalize for the brain, and then eventually not be enough, because that's what seems to happen with pornography.
Oh, I agree with that. I think that's a real problem.
It's a serious problem.
Because, you train a pilot on a simulator sometimes to handle emergencies and how to handle it. Airline pilots spend more time on crash simulation than flying the plane. They put them through more time about one engine out and flying with one engine versus flying with two engines. And they do that all through the simulation. If we look back and we say to ourselves that, if you practice these games over and over again, these video games, you know what the Army looks for drone pilots? They look for master video game players, so they can fly the drone pilots, so they can be pilots sitting in a box in Nevada in the desert.
Your brain doesn't know the difference.
Correct.
Your brain doesn't know the difference. That's just the way that it works. That's why
surgeons.
Right. So we get to this point where we say to ourselves as a society, okay, well then what is bad? What do we as society decide what's enough? Meaning, where's the line? Where does society said, you know what? I don't want you reading my grandchild dressed like that. I'm sorry. That's just my opinion. Okay. Because I used to hang out in the bathrooms and pick those guys up. And I get it. I work so many homicides. I can tell you, how many problems there have been. I get it. Okay. So I don't need society to lecture me personally that I have these opinions and they're not valid. Well, the one thing we never ask we never talk about, that every one of them has been a victim of an assault, a sexual assault. Every prostitute I ever talked to, and I talked to hundreds, were victims of sexual assault. Hundreds. Are we okay with that?
I've treated people who had previously worked in that world.
Exactly. So the point is, one of the saddest conversations I had was with a B, the penal code section in California, 647B. Okay. Every single one of the last conversations I had was with a gal by the name of Valisa Ray Joy. Her name was Valisa. That was her street name. I was her last conversation. And I told her the last night I saw her, or actually 3 or 4 hours before she was murdered, I said, Valisa, you're a pretty girl inside and out. Why are we doing this tonight? Why are you out here? And she told me, part of her story. And if you think about that, she's a human too. She has as much as every one of these little children that are picked up by the Stefan Sterns of the world. I advocate for the children. I advocate for the victims. I don't advocate for the pretend personalities because that's a different world. Because society now is moving into this next problem that we talked about a little while ago. And we're moving into that place where now even our prison system is calling inmates residences, residents. When that is a cultural shift, I don't know if anybody can see this or not, but if you look at that website and you realize, oh my gosh, this is where Brian Koberger's going. And it's going to be this situation where he's going to get in there and it's going to be a lot different than it used to be. But the problem is we are moving it into our schools. We've moved it into our churches. We've moved it into our society, into this chat. The fact that I'm talking about it has people upset and mad.
Because, Chris, what you're really saying is that over time, evil works like a groomer.
I said in 1993, be careful. We're on the road to intellectual, white-collar predators.
Right.
And I'm going to make the same prediction that Stefan Sterns is the tip of the iceberg. We're at a place in our society where it's so uncomfortable that we've been desensitized to it. It is no different.
Groomed.
We have been groomed to it.
Right.
Strategically. And it is no different than him saying, I'm sorry for the pain I caused. Or I'm sorry for the pain.
Chris, I appeared on an episode of Vinnie Politan's podcast the other day. I was his first guest ever on his podcast. I was delighted. And then it was simulcast to Court TV. And afterward, I received many lovely notes and comments, 99.9% wonderful remarks. But more than one message from people who have what can only be described as unrelenting, deranged admiration for Koberger, even though he's confessed, and are angry and say things like, what about him being a victim? And we'll say things like, two wrongs don't make a right. If you're trying to show somebody that being a bad person is wrong, you can't be bad to them. You see what I'm saying? And I look at that and I think to myself, Exhibit A for exactly what's wrong with the whole culture. Because once you take away any capacity whatsoever to feel bad for doing something wrong, then how do you develop a moral compass? You have to feel bad. You have to be uncomfortable. You have to be sent to bed without supper, kind of a thing, right? So it's complicated because if you view everything as sick, first of all, you insult the mentally ill, as far as I'm concerned, and you offer an excuse, and it's not supposed to be. an excuse. One of the reasons that sadistic personality disorder was taken out of the DSM is that people started using it as a defense in court. Your Honor, my client beat his wife because he suffers from sadistic personality disorder. I mean, can you imagine? But Michael,
How many retractions and changes have been to the DSM in your career?
Oh, well, let's see. In my career or in my lifetime? I mean, you know, right now we're in the 5th edition, and we're in a revision of the 5th edition. And you know, when I first entered, we were in the 4, the beginning of the 4, and then it went through a major revision, and then there was the 5th, and the 5th is going through its revision. And it is fascinating how we sort of construct what an illness is, you know. And you know, I was instrumental in defining and elucidating the idea of the attenuated psychosis syndrome. I dedicated about 15 years of my life to studying that, helping to define it. That's a diagnosis in the DSM-5 and the appendix. And when I was at Columbia, that was much of what I did, in addition to violence research. And it was fascinating to watch how once you define something, it sort of gets constructed in a new light, right? And but what I want to drive home is the idea that there is still such a thing as moral wrongness, and I think that has been so forgotten that it's getting scary. It's getting scary. Don't you feel it in your gut when something is wrong morally? I mean, have we really lost that barometer?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be called all kinds of things after this presentation tonight, but
I've gotten numb to it. Yeah.
Well, I know, but I stand firm in my commitment to saving children. You know, I've been shot at. I've been almost stabbed. I've been involved in 3 officer-involved shootings.
Yeah.
I have people make videos, say things about me on YouTube that, you know, I don't care. That's their problem. It's not my problem. My problem exists between me and God. He knows my heart. He sees my life, and he understands the direction I take. That's what counts to me. You know, everybody has an opinion, you know, and we all get our opinions from the internet. You know, just ask Abe Lincoln. Okay. I mean, that everything I learned about police work, I learned on the internet. Okay?
Yeah.
People have been saying things about me since the day I started in law enforcement. I think one of the best things I ever had, I had a guy in the back of the cage behind me, and I'm booking him into jail. And he leans up into the cage and he says, you know, I'm going to kill you and your family tomorrow when I get out. And I turned around, I looked at him, I says, oh, would you need my address, or you already know it? And he didn't know what to do with it. He just kind of leaned back, you know, drunk as a skunk. And of course, he didn't remember what he said the next day.
Mm-hmm.
But we are so quick as a society to say, hey, these 3 guys up here, they're the problem. They're the problem.
I mean, I never thought of it like that, but yeah, I mean, we get called the problem all the time. But
I cherish it.
before we go,
Wait, I'm sorry. It's very important that I say something because of what I'm seeing in the chat. We are not saying that there aren't some situations in which people authentically have mental illness or have psychiatric disturbances. Absolutely. I mean, listen, that's what I do for a living. Absolutely. But we must separate out a moral issue from a mental illness. Remember that psychiatry has its roots in biology and philosophy and religion. And we took all the moral problems and turned them into personality disorders. The problem is, you can't say that person has a personality disorder according to the DSM if the person doesn't suffer because of it. They have to feel that they have a problem because of it. It's an insult to the mentally ill to say, that guy's a narcissist. He has narcissistic personality. If the person doesn't feel that they're suffering in any way, To call it an illness, that has to be the implication that you suffer.
Look,
Because
I was a hostage negotiator for 11 years of my career. I've had people on bridges smearing feces all over their bodies simultaneously while threatening to jump. Gary, you know where I'm going.
oh, sure.
Okay. Of course there are mental issues.
Absolutely. That's a fallacy to think that.
Yeah.
everything's
And
all or
that we
nothing.
don't get it. Well, you know what? I've got books down here, books of commendations that I get it.
Right.
Okay. Where I've talked people out of razor blades, scalpels, feces. I mean, their own poop. I had a guy crap in his hand and smear it all over his body one night. He didn't have a shirt on, right? He had a pair of shorts. He crapped through his shorts, and next thing you know, he's wiping it all over himself. And my boss is looking at me like, you better talk him down. Okay, we got a real problem here. Yeah, no kidding. I got to get him over the side before we can gang fu him. That's what we used to call it, i.e. multiple people to take him into custody. And doctors, nurses, psychiatric nurses, doctors like Brucato, we get it. We understand it. Okay. And so the one thing we don't do is we don't categorize them into particular boxes like our society is doing. And that's what we're afraid of. And that's why we're having this conversation tonight. We are actually afraid that once piece of potential problem, i.e. maybe a mental disorder of some sort, I don't know. I'm not attracted to children. But if you identify as a MAP, minor attracted person, to me, I think we've crossed the line. I think we have to say to ourselves, wait a minute, maybe we should take a look at our society and what we are willing to accept. I am not willing to accept handing my grandchildren or anybody else's children over to a subset of society that says, yeah, but I'm this way. Well, you know what? There are a lot of people that dress up with lightsabers and believe they're Jedis. Okay. It doesn't make them a Jedi. And that's the problem with our society, in my opinion. Just go to Comic-Con. Not all of them. Well, look at Koberger. He cosplays Bundy. What a game that was.
Well, it's the loss of the boundary between fantasy and reality that's also characterizing a lot of new evil. It's that kind of I could be anything I dream myself to be stuff that you see with the, like where a person says, I'll make a TikTok and I'll manufacture my own fame, I mean, I saw somebody once who is a fairly well-known TikToker say to someone, so I'm trying to remember the situation without giving away who it is, but they basically said to someone in a public sphere something like this: do you know who you're talking to? Do you know who I am? Like that. And I recognize them, and I was thinking to myself, who are you? What are you? Why do you exist? Like, this is your existence? Like, what? Like, the meaning of your life is that you mince around and think you're adorable on 30-second videos and get a bunch of likes, or, and to me, that there's such an emptiness to that. I don't understand it. But that's the other piece of this, Chris, is the idea of immediacy, not having to work toward anything. You don't have any. Your identity can be like bought in a can. It reminds me of once. This is an honest to God true story. I was in a Barnes and Noble once, and there was these two. I guess they were millennials, and one said to the other one that they had read a book called something like 30 Minutes to Nirvana, something like that. Like a book about how you could achieve nirvana with like 30 minutes of meditation or something. And so they said to the other one, you have got to try nirvana. It is great. And the other one was like, really? And he's like, yeah, this book made it possible. I was thinking to myself, I'd like to take your two heads like coconuts. Because this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my time. But that's what is happening to the culture, is this idea of I could be whatever I want to be, and all I got to do is choose it and work toward it, and and I'll be that thing. Reality has kind of flown the coop. And and the other thing, of course, is that there's this idea that this is a kind of all-inclusive Mr. Rogers kumbaya world where there's nobody bad. Nobody's bad. Come on, Brian. Come on in. You got feelings too. People hurt you, so we understand. You took a knife and you went in a room and you killed somebody. You were hurt. You got feelings too, bro. Come on, kumbaya. Come on. This bothers me. But this is the reality of the time we're living in, and we could talk about it all night. It's
So
absolutely
last story, Josh, and then if it's okay with you, just
Go for it.
to build off of what Gary said.
yeah. But you agree, Chris, right?
Oh, totally agree.
Yeah, right.
Totally agree.
Bro. People are laughing. I said, bro.
Okay, so we had a body dump of a guy. He's wrapped in plastic, duct taped, and he's thrown into a dumpster behind a Safeway grocery store. We get called out. Emmy IDs this guy, and we go up to Huntington Beach. And we're in this apartment. We did a search warrant in an apartment up there. And while we're up there, my partner's talking. It's not my case. I'm just help supporting on the case. We're interviewing everybody in the house, yada, yada. Whoops, there he is. And somebody knocks on the door. And my partner says, answer the door. So I open the door, and this person walks in. And we're like, hi, we're the Popo. These are real, real badges, and we're working a caper here. Do you know this guy? You ever heard of him? Oh, yeah. The guy's name was Lance, the victim. Oh, yeah, I know Lance. I've known him for a long time. Okay, well, do you have any ID? She goes, you don't recognize me? I don't know if I've ever told this in public, Josh, but I'm going to say it. Do I have your permission?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, it could make news. She goes, you don't recognize me? I said, am I supposed to? She goes, yeah. You don't know who I am? I said, no. And she hands me her ID. I look at the name. It says Lisa Kudrow.
From Friends?
From Friends, the blonde. And I said, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Do you know Lance? Right. She goes, you don't know me? I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I don't.
I don't watch much TV, man.
I missed that episode. Okay. And it's to this point. Okay. To your point, exactly. It's like, now that was before any of the other stuff that exists today. And so I can imagine what you were thinking when it's like, let me tell you. And you know what? There you go. Life goes on. We solved the case, and she didn't have to testify in the proceedings. But
well, it is really important that there's something that I have to say before we end, because I have to comment on something that I've been seeing in the chat. So somebody in the chat pointed out that we need to bear in mind that only people who have been hurt people. In the New Evil, one of the whole points is that people early in the scale hurt people because they've been hurt. But when you move up the scale, you deal with people who have these motivations that are just about hurting people because you enjoy it sexually, psychologically, fantasy wise, personality wise. You maybe were hurt, but not all of them. And so it is sometimes true that only hurt people. Sometimes people hurt people because they have fully embraced for their own enjoyment hurting other people. And it is precisely that lumping everybody into one bucket, that they're only victims, is, I think, precisely the problem. It is actually a hallmark of darkness to speak in absolutes, to speak in black and white terms, and the reality is that there's a gray in there. Some of these people just have brains and or ways of dealing with personal experiences that make them think, because their moral compass is just not working or absent, or certain brain areas are possibly not working, if you want to take a biological approach, or absent. But the reality is that they can simply do these things because they like it. It's as simple as that. And there are offenders that if you said to them, "Why'd you do this? Who hurt you?" They'll say, "Oh, I just enjoy it. It's fun. I like it. I enjoy it. So I'm attracted to it. It's what gets me off. It's what I do." So I just want to point that out, because I think it's very dangerous to take the approach of saying only hurt people hurt people. That's not true. It's sometimes true, but not always true. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm really,
Yeah.
really quick.
You all right, Josh? Something wrong?
No, I'm fine. I just had to let the dog out.
Oh, sorry.
Who let the dog out?
At least we know who let the dog out. We finally have an answer to that age-old question. I was still trying to figure out why fools fall in love.
Yeah,
Now I know the answer to that musical conundrum.
it was me. Rosebud wants to know, does the panel think any of the hundreds of photos, and it's actually thousands, I believe.
Sometimes I make myself laugh, and it's really disturbing, but I don't know. I have a twisted sense of humor. Go ahead.
Does the panel think any of the hundreds of photos he had, or that he had, other victims? Do you think that Stearns had other victims?
Sure.
Statistically speaking, it's very probable based on his age. I mean, he would have
Kinda what I-
probably had that attraction for a very long time, and given that he seems to lack even the slightest shred of human decency, I
And-
can't imagine that he didn't have other victims.
Here's your crocheting partner, Dr. Gary.
Oh, I love Dee. Dee's
Dee-
such a nice person.
She's wonderful. Do you think that Jen Soto didn't show up due to pending charges? It's possible. I've heard that she's hospitalized as well, but I don't know that to be a fact. And that will lead this into this question. Can you speak on Jen not speaking today? I was astonished by it. Her not being there didn't really surprise me, but she could have written a letter and they would have read it in court for her. Trust me, they would let anybody speak. Apparently, Stephen Stearns had the floor for as long as he wanted, and all he was talking about was how much he's going to miss, Maddie. I mean, just a ridiculous circus. But yeah, I think that it's crazy that she didn't even send a letter for somebody to read, and it didn't have to be detailed. It didn't have to go into, but it could have just, but possibly she could be possibly facing some charges. But before,
Right. But we don't know.
no, we don't know that.
Motives of what we don't know. For example, if she was abused, we don't know how much she knew about what was going on. We don't know how much she turned a blind eye to it. We don't know how much she gave her child over to this. We don't know if she's got cognitive issues and is limited. We don't know any of it. I think, or mental health issues.
I don't see any
There's
mothering
something up with this story, obviously. But having done a lot of work with this kind of stuff,
Yeah,
a lot of times there's more to the story with the other parent.
no question.
And I think, Chris, I mean, that how complicated these dynamics can get. And a lot of times when you're investigating, this is precisely the person you have to turn to get the truth. But you have to break the spell that they're under.
My
Chris, you know
secretary
that,
used to
right?
walk. The secretary used to walk back to the homicide group, and she'd lean in and go, "That person has issues. She's at the front desk," and that's where you leave it. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we don't know, but she's definitely she got hoodwinked, and or she was aware of what was going on, and she doesn't want to testify or get out there in any way, shape, or form,
Mhm.
because then the court would appoint her an attorney as soon as she started to break that ice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
But wait a minute. Well, I'm sorry, I have to ask this. I know we got to go, but when they were looking through this guy's electronics, you don't think there were other kids there, or at least
Oh, I
other
think there are other
vile-
children there.
or other vile?
Yeah,
Right.
oh, there's no question. They found terabytes of it. And here's another really good point to real fast. And Josh, put the next question up because I'll end it. Look at the difference between
I don't think I have it.
Koberger and the gag order and the sunshine laws in Florida. Both men were charged with the death penalty. One, the family couldn't get anything. In Florida, society got everything. They had the same result.
Mm.
I cannot wait till I never have to hear either of these guys' names again.
Well, it's coming to an end, sort of. And I understand the plea deal more so in this case. I'm just the way that all these are rolled out and presented. I'm not much of a fan of that. I understand the sensitive nature of this case and what people would have to be, specifically jurors, subjected to. And so I understand it. I don't always agree with it. But I mean, that's just kind of how it is.
Well, in our culture, we always have, at every given time, there's always the offender who's on the front page news that there are people attracted to and fascinated by, and then the one that everybody collectively agrees is nauseating. Right? It's like the same way that Hollywood always has an actor filling a certain archetype.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like the way like DiCaprio is the modern Brando, who was might be viewed as the modern Barrymore, who might be, in other words, there's always somebody in a certain archetypical role, like a pantheon of gods, and that happens with offenders. We have in our collective consciousness, we have certain boogeymen who embody these roles. And my question very quickly is, now that Koberger is going to step away as the hybristophilia object du jour, who do you think is the next offender that there are going to be people defending and saying they're attracted to, and he didn't do it, and he's an innocent creature, and I'm going to be there for him? Who do you think's next?
I don't know. Do you have an idea?
There's always one. When Koberger steps down, who's going to be in that role?
Oh, that's Barry Morphew.
Mangione is also like that.
Oh,
Mangiane's like that. Yeah, Barry. Yeah, Luigi. They're gonna fight. They're gonna determine. They're the next movement here.
Right. And who is the current equivalent of the everybody knows the person's guilty and this nauseated collective? Like there's
Luigi.
no one writing letters about how they're in love with Stefan Stern.
Yeah, Hurman also was a newscast crasher.
That's a good one. Yeah, because I don't know of anybody writing love letters to Hurman.
Before we go, I want to play Maddie's. It's just like 1 or 2 minutes. Maddie Soto's biological father. I'm sure that he's been criticized in this because he was absent or not around her a lot. He was around her some, but not a lot. But he had the gumption to show up and speak on behalf, of his daughter. And I have respect for that. And I think that it's necessary for us to listen to. And I'm going to play that. And then
As we would do it. Yeah, well, this is the vulnerability that I think Stearns used. Your birth father isn't here. I'm here. Let me. And I'm sure that was because it's a common technique.
Have you seen this, Dr. Gary?
No, actually, I'm going to
You
be.
haven't either.
I'm really looking forward to it because
Yeah.
I've heard about it.
All right.
Can you let the court know your names?
My name is Tyler Wallace.
Tatiana Wallace.
Tyler, what's your relationship to Madeline Soto?
Madeline Soto was my daughter.
Go ahead.
Madeline Soto was my daughter. She was happiness. She was a joy to be around. She was quirky and intelligent. She was curious. A little forgetful like me too. That happens sometimes, but I just loved her so much. And I was not able to be in her life as much as I would like to, due to circumstances and choices I'd made, due to the way finances worked. I was strained in my relationship with my daughter, and that was finally getting better. The last time I saw her was in October of 2023, and she had come to visit for a few days. And when I took her back to the airport, I said, you're turning 13 soon. When you turn 13, you have a choice of which guardian you're interested in staying with. Would you like to stay with me and talk to you? And she said yes, that she would. And so I was this close to having my little girl, sir. Because of the actions of this depraved man, I will never meet the woman she was becoming. And I can't grasp it. I can't grasp the selfishness of you, the deplorability of your actions. You're depraved. You're weak. You're a coward. You're a sneak thief. You crept into a family and took advantage and exploited them when they were weak. It's torn my family apart. It's led to arguments about who can go where and who can get what and who can help who, but we're all on edge because it doesn't heal with time. This isn't like other deaths that I've experienced. This just gets worse. It just gets worse every time I rethink about it and the true horror of what this man visited upon her. And I can only hope that he lives a long time in prison and has those same horrors revisited upon him by his fellow inmates. Thank you.
God bless him. He who is without sin cast the first stone. Who, if they're perfect parents out there, I'd love to meet them. That probably wasn't an easy thing for him to admit to the world, but he did it because he needed to speak. Jen wasn't there. Nobody cares about Stefan's, and there were other statements by cousins and I think aunts, and you can see all of that on you can check it out on Court TV, and but it was I have a lot of empathy for the man, and she was just turning 13. There was still a lot of time in life for their relationship to become something special. And that Stearns took that from both of them.
Well, Josh, you quoted Christ. Christ also said, if anyone should make one of these little ones fall, it would be better for him to have a millstone tied around his neck and be cast into the depth of the sea. And I have no doubt that what the Lord was talking about there was the abuse of children. I'm sure that's what he meant.
I agree.
I've always interpreted that to mean that he was talking about child abuse. Don't you, Chris?
I hope so. Yeah. I see a soap sock party coming for
Yeah, I do too.
for Stearns.
Oh,
but what I mean is, do you think that's what Christ meant? When he said,
Yeah. I think he, remember he flipped the tables over.
Yeah.
Righteous indignation. Again, it goes back to, is it better to be loved by God or to be trusted by him? When he flipped those tables over, he didn't trust the money changers. And he told them so. And he started it with a question, in my Father's house.
Mhm.
And so the fact that he does that and did that, that's justice and mercy satisfied through the atonement of Christ. It
Right.
has to be satisfied through the full repentance process, and part of that process is restitution. Stearns can never restore life. Only God can. And all of these individuals. That's why repentance can never be fulfilled in totality. Now, I'm assuming there are some exceptions to that, not to get into, philosophy of it, but this idea of the innocence of a child, God's also going to hold our society accountable. All of us, if we turn a blind eye to these things that are taking place in the world and not speak up. We have to do some self-reflecting as society, not as individuals, but as a society, because it is a society that Christ organized, the body of Christ. He organized a society of rules, of morals, of compasses, and we're perverting it in the world, all over the world. It doesn't matter what religion you are.
Well, isn't that the essence of the story of the Garden of Eden? It's basically a story about the seduction of innocence. It's a kind of grooming
and
story.
one of the amazing part I love about that particular story is God asked the question, who beguiled you?
Right.
Why does he do that? Why did he ask the question? Because the atonement would have to descend below all things, including those who beguiled. In order for the atonement to be complete and full, it has to be in totality all evil. That's what caused Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane to bleed at every pore. That's what caused Christ to go into the garden 3 separate times. The first time he trips, the second time he falls, and the third time he falls on his face. I believe that is 3 separate places where man sins. Maybe it was from me, the first fall. Maybe I did something worse, and that was the second fall. Maybe I did something really bad, and that was the third fall, actually on his face. But all the first couple of times, remember, he came back to the apostles and he said to them, "Thou sleepest?" Meaning we were blind. We're blind to it, yet it's in front of us. Okay? I believe, and when I made a covenant with God, where only I can break it, when I said to the Lord that day when my son was almost kidnapped, I said to him, "You give me a chance. I won't let you down, I promise. I don't care what people think. I don't care what they say. I work for you, and I will do it." And that day, he opened every window and every door so that I could feel the breeze and then sense the sunshine and walk through it. Now, am I perfect? Heck no. I need the atonement every day. And that's why I take the sacrament on Sunday, because I sin just like the next person. I'm not perfect at all in any way, shape, or form, but he is. And he can make me whole.
But there are no people that have light of their own. We're just sort of like the moon or diamonds that reflect the light. I think the problem is when you start thinking the light comes from you, then you got a problem. But when you realize that it's just about it being shining on you, then you realize that God can use anybody he wants, including people that are down in the mud. And he often does. In fact, sometimes I think he has a soft spot for them. I think some of the greatest saints that have ever existed were people who were down in the mud and, and were used in that way. But it's a very, very powerful thing that we're stumbling into talking about here, which is that we're stripping away the superficial and the philosophical and the psychological, and we're understanding that underneath all of it is a great cosmic moral question of what the heck is wrong with all of us, that we live in a world where there are people who destroy innocence.
Well, somebody, I can't find the comment now, but somebody said, if God was so great, why would he let this happen to a little kid? And I'll give you the answer. I don't know. Because I ask that about my mom every day.
The
Why?
answer is simple. And I agree. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
The answer is simple. Okay.
Free will.
The greatest gift I give unto you is life. Second unto that is the ability to choose. When I sat with a parent, and this is one of the cases that has stuck with me and through my career. And actually, Gary talked to me about it the other day in the car. It was very therapeutic, actually. It was a kid I put into 46 different bags.
Yeah.
He stood in front of an Amtrak train, and his body disintegrated. And I sat in front of his mother, and she asked that question. She said to me, why did God allow this to happen? And I said to her, I said, I don't know how we can make sense of this. It's not going to make sense. It's not going to make any sense. But I will share with you that even on the cross, the Savior looked up into heaven and he says, Father, why hast thou forsaken me? I said, I'm sure that the man who was driving the train, who struck your son, is asking the same question. We won't know what that answer is, but we do and we can take comfort that even the Lord asks the exact same question. Father, why hast thou forsaken me?
His son was tortured to death, Chris.
Yeah. But the point, and she got it real fast. She was like, thank you. And she was just bawling her head all, and I was on the verge of tears. I had to leave. I was like, I'm so sorry that, that I had to advise you this information. I had the ME with me, the coroner investigator anyway. And we had to tell her. That's the hollowness that folks sometimes forget about when you work homicide.
Yeah.
And it's a natural death or something like that. The ME will say, hey, would you guys go do the notification? And so we have to sit with these families. I'm sure that happened in your situation, Josh, where, they had to tell, the ME had to tell your family, hey, there's a lot going on here. Okay?
Yeah, and then you have to go identify.
Yeah. And you do, and it's not a religious thing, because all religions have different philosophies in relationship to why they believe, things are what they are. Look at Emily Pike right now. She can't cross over the river in her religion tradition for Native Americans because her body's dismembered. So they're trying to find her other parts of her body so that she can progress into the eternities. Okay? And I've had many great conversations with her uncle about that. How can we help try to make that whole for that family? They can't make that connection yet. In their tradition, or their religious traditional beliefs are that she has to be whole to move through the eternities and become, one with the earth. And so these kind of things are important to remember when we talk about, categorizing, this is turning into, this kind of conversation. That no, it's a conversation about the world, about life. Everybody, we're all in this together, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, that's a fact.
It's one fruitcake pressing a red button that says, what does this do? Boom. And next thing you know it, craziness starts. I have always asked myself, and I just listened to Viktor Frankl's book again, A Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah,
Hey.
I love it.
And it's a great book, isn't it, Doc?
Yes,
and
I recommend it often to patients.
Totally an amazing, amazing book. Totally recommend it. But for me, my thought process went to why in 1933, 1939, what in society was going on? Now we take out the sexual stuff, but we can overlay some of the feelings that people have when somebody says something they don't agree with. You automatically are the problem. That's what they say. It's not me saying you, and that's not how God reacts. It's that's his opposition to all things. There has to be opposition in all things, or else you wouldn't appreciate the sweetness of life. There has to be good times and bad times.
Right. Well, Chris, what you're picking up on, and I think it's a great place to end on, is that when these terrible things happen, we pay attention to the evil, but we miss the point that there are people running around being the hands of God in these situations too. At every horrendous crime scene, there are the fire workers and the EMS and the cops and the the people that are trying to get the person busted, and the social workers and psychologists and psychiatrists and the courts and the judges and the doctors, etc. And I just think that we have to pay attention to that. Mother Teresa, a fascinating figure, used to pray all the time in front of the Eucharist, in front of the Blessed Sacrament every day, I think an hour. And one day there was this terrible earthquake in Calcutta, I think it was. And the crucifix that was there broke. The arms broke off. And she was very upset, and she looked all over the place in the rubble for the arms so that she could put the crucifix back up. And she kept apologizing to God that she couldn't find Christ's arms. And she swore that she distinctly heard a voice say to her, "You be my arms." And that's it. That's the point. And I think that's what we are. Even in this conversation, if one person listening to this conversation says, I feel strangely consoled, then God has used us as his arms. And and you know what I'm saying? And I think that's what we have to try to remember so we don't get disheartened. I think he hates this evil as much as we do. And he sends the helpers, but we keep thinking he sends the evil.
And so we don't keep Josh away from his puppy for the next 6 hours.
Yes.
4 words, and then I'm going to check out. And thank you, Josh, for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate this.
And thank you, Lab Rats, and everybody for understanding. Forgive me if I offended anyone. That's not my intent.
Chris, let me just say this really fast before you go.
Of course.
I believe that the way that you see the world is because you've been in that world. You've been knee deep in that world. You've seen it.
Yeah.
You've seen a million Stephen Sterns. You've talked to them. You've hunted them. I don't think that you should have to apologize for feeling how you feel. I appreciate your point of view. I don't agree with you on everything ever, but I agree with you a lot of the time. And you don't agree with me on everything either. And that's just fine with me. And I appreciate you, Chris.
Well, thank you for your kindness in saying that. I would just tell the Lab Rats tonight, it's been an absolute treat to be with you guys. sincerely. And I would, 4 words: lift where you stand. Have a good night.
Take care.
Aloha.
Take care.
Well, that was a very powerful conversation, and I think it is nice to be reminded that there is good in the world when you're dealing with things as horrendous as the Soto case.
It's one of it's you know what
Yeah, right.
it's one of the foulest cases that it's just a very terrible thing. Crochet True Crime says, just catching up. Dr. G Crochets, best natural Xanax ever. I love that book. Chris, you don't crochet?
No, but I think it's beautiful when other people do.
By the way,
yeah.
go and get, if you have not, Dr. Gary's book, The New Evil. You can order it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any major bookstore near you. It is a fascinating read. And I know a lot of people, I get a lot of comments. They say, I follow Dr. Gary all over, and which is awesome. I mean,
Hopefully not literally, but that book, I'm delighted to say
yeah.
it was once again the #1 bestseller in forensic psychology the other day on Amazon. And given that it came out 6 years ago, I think that's because it's probably more timely than ever.
And it's so well written, and there's so much in that book that you will learn. You'll learn things that you'll learn things that you never want to know about. Like I say this, all the stuff that I went through and my family went through, but not just me, but my family. And I'll tell this really fast, is that when there's a homicide committed in somebody's home, and the coroner comes in and they take the body away and they do their investigation and they put their little numbers next to the bullets and, outline things like that. And they leave after they take their photos and everything. And there's a bloody mess left. Do you know who cleans that up? You do.
Oh, I see.
My grandmother took a bucket of hot water and scrubbed her daughter's blood off the ground in her own home. And it's just heartbreaking that people have to go through those kinds of things and see those kinds of things. And it's just the worst. We've all seen just terrible things. We've been exposed to terrible things. And but I think, a lot of people think that somebody comes in and the state sends somebody in or the city sends somebody in. Nah, that's not how that works. Now, if you have a lot of money, you could hire somebody, because there are places that specialize in that stuff. It's not cheap either, by the way. And I just can't imagine what Maddie saw and went through and dealt with on a daily basis. And there was nobody there to protect her.
Even worse than that, the person that was abusing her told her that he was protecting her.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. Dr. Gary, thank you so much for being here.
You're
And,
welcome, Josh. And I'm glad that we're not afraid to go to these dark places in the conversations, because I think this is really the truth of it. And there's a reason I limit the shows I go on. I get a feel for people and what's motivating them, and I know your heart is really in this, that everything you do is, whether it's the funny stuff or the dark stuff, it's always motivated by this kind of colossal experience of pain and identification with people who have been hurt. And I think that there's a connective tissue between people like me and Chris and you, and is that all of us are people that have looked into the abyss in different ways or experienced differentness or isolation or whatever. And instead of wallowing in it, have said, let me go out and, to quote Eleanor Roosevelt, it's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. And I think that is the connective thread. And I think, the true crime community is filled with people with all different motivations and so forth. But I'm very drawn to people that are in it because they see their life existentially as a kind of scrubbing away of an evil that came into, wanting to undo it in some way by not making someone else have to feel it. And that's a beautiful thing, because in the final analysis, what else could you do? It's the most unselfish thing to do. So I really appreciate it, and thank you for letting me tell the story about the the things I saw
Absolutely.
with my classmates when I was in seminary. All right, thank you, everyone. Thanks for. Go ahead.
What was it that you said at the bus station? Be well.
Stay strong.
Stay strong.
I had someone write me after the court TV appearance and
That was
say,
my favorite.
and they said, I sometimes see you on the street, but I don't come up and say hello, something like that. And I was like, okay, well, stay strong.
All right. Dr. Gary, thank you so much. Stay strong.
Stay strong.
Appreciate you. Thank you, Dr. Gary.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. Wow, that was let me see here. Thank you guys for the support of the channel. I appreciate it, and thank you to everybody. It's been an interesting, thought-provoking episode, and I always look forward to these conversations, and as deep as they go, I enjoy it. Some people, they always say, well, you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't say that. I think people, within reason should say how they feel and what they feel. And I got no problem with that. So thank you guys for being here. I hope that Stephen Stearns has a terrible time as an inmate, and just, I just hope he has the worst time ever. I appreciate you guys so much. It's good to see you. And we will talk to you later. Thank you.